Good morning and welcome to Marjorie's table on this. I think it's the 8th of October this morning. I thought it was the beginning of October, but actually we've already had one in October. It was in the middle of the Wigtown Book Festival, so I can be forgiven for not knowing exactly where we were in the year at that point. We're going to do this morning what we always do, which is to do a quick warm up, and then we're going to look at two poems by not only one of my favorite poets, but my mentor this morning. So if you have harsh words, soften them because it shouldn't matter, but it's someone that I care about. Um, but of course, you should tell me if you think the poems aren't working in the chat box too. But before we get to that, we're going to do something slightly different this morning just to change it up. I want you to write two words at the top of your page, and then I want you to try and fill in the gap. Same kind of exercise, except that we're just looking at a spectrum in a way. So the first word is curl. Add the word curl on one side of the page, and then write the word flat on the other. And then just take a minute and try and put words in between them. They can also not necessarily make sense to anyone but you, and that's okay. So curl and flat and the words in between. I'll pop that in the chat box and I'll be back in a minute or so. Okay, and when you're ready, if you feel up to it, pop a few of those words into the chat box that you like particularly, and I will share them with everyone else. If you're live with us, steal a few of the words that you like the look of. I will do the same, so you've got a couple of mine too. Lovely hiss, unloosen, waft, spiral, whorl, tracing the curl, calm, plain, unravel, beautiful, quaver, expanse, drab, got another plane, loop, whirl, loop, wind, furl, beautiful, to heal and become, palm of hand, shell, pancake, dread, eat your crusts. I love that. Nappy, perm, relax, tendrils, explore, curl beautiful hair like coils of gold. That feels like a poem itself. Skipping rope, roll, fingers, palm. Okay, if you're live with me, there's stacks of beautiful words there. You should steal a few of them for your own writing and try and get them in your writing. I always forget to say it, but the idea there is that if you're using loops of gold in your writing and you haven't even worked out, we're going to try and write a piece about this morning, often it makes the piece do something interesting that surprises you and then will surprise your reader, and that's usually good. If you don't like it later, it's really easy to edit it out. So this morning we're going to look at the work of Mimi Khalvati, who is a British Iranian poet. She moved to Britain in her childhood or went to go to school and then never went back. So she's a bit like me, sort of between two places in a way. Let me share my screen. The link for the first poem is in the chat box in case you need it. Um, yeah, so she's also been a mentor to me. So yeah, she's very, very special, but also a really tough mentor in a good way. You know, she would forever say, go fix that piece. It's not working hard enough, which is often what we need, I think, as poets anyway. Let's have a listen to her reading it, I think. And if that's any trouble, I'll read it.
Overblown roses. She held one up, twirling it in her hand, as if to show me how the world began and ended in perfection. I was stunned. How could she make a rose so woebegone? Couldn't silk stand stiff? And how could a child, otherwise convinced of her mother's taste, know what to think? It's overblown, she smiled. I love roses when they're past their best. Overblown roses. The words swam in my head, making sense as I suddenly saw afresh the rose now, the rose ahead, where a petal clings to a last breath, where my mother's flesh and mine, going the same way, may still be seen as beautiful, if these words are said.
So let's listen to her read it one more time, because I think it takes a little while for this one. It's so dense, to sink in anyway.
Overblown roses. She held one up, twirling it in her hand, as if to show me how the world began and ended in perfection. I was stunned. How could she make a rose so woebegone? Couldn't silk stand stiff? And how could a child, otherwise convinced of her mother's taste, know what to think? It's overblown, she smiled. I love roses when they're past their best. Overblown roses. The words swam in my head, making sense as I suddenly saw afresh the rose now, the rose ahead, where a petal clings to a last breath, where my mother's flesh and mine, going the same way, may still be seen as beautiful, if these words are said.
So if you have thoughts on the poem, maybe pop them in the chat box because it would be nice to hear what you think about them. A couple of quick craft notes from me. This is a sonnet. Mimi's known for her sonnets. I think, in fact, I have a book of hers that's entirely in sonnet, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's not the only one. But I think it's doing that thing that good sonnets do, which is doing that thing at the end, turning, which is called the volta, but in a way that's slightly surprising. You know, we think of it's got to be a big shift in action or a big shift in something, but in fact, it's a really tiny moment. Nothing has changed except her own understanding. And for me, sonnets that do that thing of suddenly letting you into a deeper meaning, um, I enjoy more because it's less of a big shift and more of a moment of you think, aha, actually, the overblown here could mean me, it could mean my mother, and it could be beautiful, which I really appreciate, rather than something huge happening. So note that, and if you enjoyed that or not, or if you even noticed it or not, which I think is part of its charm. And speaking about noticing, the other thing I think Mimi does beautifully here is the rhyme. For me, and again, noticing what we enjoy and what we don't enjoy is the whole battle, because actually you might enjoy poems that I don't. You will for sure. But for me here, the rhyme is so subtle and it doesn't get in the way. It doesn't give that kadunk, kadunk, kadunk nursery rhyme feel. And so I don't feel I'm being lectured to in a way. Um, and for me, I was just listening to her read it the second time, thinking that first line, for example, just runs straight into the second. And so you're not minded to hear it as the end of a line and the beginning of a rhyme. It has this feeling of being one poem. And all it does is kind of move us along rather than feeling sing-songy in a way that I personally don't always appreciate. So the rhyme is doing a beautiful job here of being kind of subtle and moving us along, in the same way that the volta is doing something about telling us something deeper without taking us out of the poem, without moving us away from this beautiful scene, which is what I think the trick for a sonnet often is. I can see you have comments too. Thank you. So let me look at them. Um, the rhyme is so subtle, Louise, exactly. And I think that's why it works for me, because I don't love super rhyming metric poems that clunk. I feel they're a bit like nursery rhymes at times, and it just jars with me. But I know lots of other people love it. So write what you love, not what other people love. Um, yeah, it really captures that certainty that children have by being shifted by a sudden thought. I agree, Becca. But also as adults, you suddenly think, oh, I mistook that. And again, as a reader, we have that same sensation. We thought the poem was about something and then it's something else. So it's doing that very clever thing of mimicking in the reader what's happening in the action, if there is such a thing. Overblown is such a lovely word. I agree. I like how the rhyme in the sestet is like an overblown rose folding in on itself. Terrific comment, Richard. That's really very beautiful. Um, Past their best. I love that too. And then, of course, it's a child seeing someone as beautiful, so maybe past their best isn't exactly, it's maybe the world's definition because the child is insisting that she loves them because they're beautiful. So there's this lovely thing of resurrecting in a way of an older person. The rhyme is simple and clever, satisfying. Most beautiful expression of aging, where my mother's flesh and mind. Exactly, that's the moment I think for me that I realize it's about something else. It's about our own experience, not just the child's. The shift to woebegone is beautiful. Reminds me of lying next to my mother who is past her best and dying. Well, Yoko, I hope that's a good memory. And reassurance of repeating overblown from different angles. I agree. That's a really, really nice note, Mary. She uses that word twice, so it rings for us. We know it's important, which is really terrific. Okay, I'm going to stop there and get us writing. It's 43 minutes past. We're only going to look at two poems by Mimi today because the second one's a little bit longer. But I want you to write about, obviously, you're always welcome to write about whatever comes. So if you think, oh, there's a bit in there, I remember roses in some way, or there's something else that strikes a memory in you, do write about that. But I want you to write about someone you love as a stage in a flower or a tree or a plant cycle. It can be a bud, it can be, like this autumn. It can be whatever you want it to be. Or you can write about yourself that way if you like someone else seeing you that way. But I think that could, for me, that might be harder. So write about someone you love in some site as a plant of some kind, or the memory of a plant reminding you of that person. We've got a stack of beautiful words. It's now 44 minutes past. I'll give you till 52, and I'll give you a minute's warning on the way back, right? Whatever comes. And I'll give you a minute's warning before we come back together. I'll pop all that in the chat box. Just another 30 seconds or so. Okay, here is a ghazal by Mimi. The link for it is in the chat box in case you need it, or in the email that you received if you are watching this back on the recording. Mimi is a master of form and is very particular about form, and maybe that is no surprise if you've been writing with me for a while, because she really and sort of drilled it into me that form really can make and save a poem, or if you're not using it, it's a choice not to use it, but not just because you hadn't really thought about it. So, of course, ghazal being one of the more famous forms, and particularly in Persian poetry. Let me give it a read and then I'll give you a prompt. In silence. Let them be the battles you fought in silence. Bury your shame, the worst you thought, in silence. At last, my beloved has haggled with death. One more day was the pearl she bought in silence. At night, she heard the blacksmith hammering chains. At dawn, she saw the fretwork wrought in silence. The only wrong I've done is to live too long, my beloved's eyes tell the court in silence. She's as young as the month of Ordibichet, month of my birth, spring's mid-leap caught in silence. My beloved, under the shade of a palm, was the girl, the mother I sought in silence. Loneliness is innumerate. Days slip by. Suns rise that daylight moons distort in silence. The bell on her wrist was silent, her fingers ice cold as the julep she bought in silence. Mimi June, my beloved's voice climbs 3 steep notes for tears to thwart in silence. 3 syllables of equal weight, equal stress, dropped in a well, keep falling short in silence. I'm going to get us writing rather than reading it again. Write about a time at the last day or last moment or one of the last days you spent with someone. It doesn't have to be someone as in here where someone's passing away. It can be an old school friend. It can be, in my case, a child who just went off to university, or a parent that's across the water, or even just the last time you saw them. They can still be here, but that moment, the last time you saw someone, that's important to you. I'll give you maybe 3 or 4 minutes to write about that, and then I'll give you one more prompt to take away on this poem. There is a comment, so let me read it out. The reverence of the poem. I agree, Mary. There's something about it that feels almost church-like, like a litany in a way, which I really appreciate given the subject matter. So yeah, there's something about the way the ghazal works here that doesn't sort of annoy me with the in silence. I just am waiting to see what else she does with it, which is really nice. Okay, off you go. Something about the last time you saw someone. Again, it doesn't have to be about death. It probably shouldn't be, but yeah. And I'll bring us back together for a final prompt as we close. Okay, your takeaway prompt today is just to write using this line here of Mimi's. She's as young as the month of, and she's saying she's the young and as the month of Orda Behesht, but actually you can write she's or he's as young as the month of, or young as, and come up with something physical, something you wouldn't expect about someone you want to write about. It can be a friend or yourself, writing about yourself in the third person, but a young or as old as, and then try and put something in there that you wouldn't expect. An iron, a month, a cup of coffee, whatever it is, and see where it takes you. If you end up publishing that piece, make sure that you credit Mimi by usually just by putting an epigraph in saying after does the job of getting you out of trouble, as it were, and also giving a nod to the poem, to the poet who's written the piece that inspired it. So that's all from me this morning. It's lovely to see so many of you. See you same time, same place next Wednesday morning. Bye, everyone. I hope you have a great week. Lots of writing. And find Mimi's poems. She's wonderful.